Welcome to Literary AF Podcast.
Bonjour! Bienvenue.
Welcome?
What other French words?
Oh, God, I don't even know.
Merci.
Est-ce que je peux aller aux toilettes?
Oh, je m'appelle Sheldon. Hi, welcome to Literary AF. My name is Sheldon.
I'm Danni.
And we're here today to talk to you about a book. French one.
Big one.
This is actually the long-awaited and much-desired Les Mis Part 2. I don't know if it's much desired. Have we gotten emails frantically begging for Part 2?
No, I don't think we have.
Okay.
I actually forgot this was only the second part. I thought this was the third part.
Well, we covered books 1 and 2 of Les Miserables
right.
in the first part.
Because it's cut up into a bunch of books.
Yeah.
Right.
Les Miserables is cut up into 5 sections.
Yep.
We did part 1 and 2 last time. This is parts 3 and 4.
Yep.
And then probably next week we'll be doing the final part.
The finale.
And thoughts, or else thoughts might get divided into a second episode.
It depends on how long the finale takes to wind down.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm excited.
Yep.
Les Miserables by Victor Hugo is my favorite book in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm rereading it for, I think, the 3rd time.
Wow.
And I have an abridged copy.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's mostly I really like the abridged copy because there's certain sections that Hugo includes that I wouldn't want to read through. Like we talked about, what did we talk about last time? Oh, the whole him visiting the battlefield or whatever, and just walking around thinking about what Napoleon's war was like.
Yeah.
There's also, in the section we're talking about today, there's one whole thing he skips of describing how thieves can't, the language that thieves use.
Yep.
How that worked in the 1800s in France.
Yeah.
And there's a huge section that's infamous in the last part where he describes the sewer systems beneath Paris and how that works.
Yep. That's the thing I know about the book.
Yeah.
As a whole is just there's a huge chapter about the London sewer system or Paris sewer system.
That's the only thing you know about Les Mis?
That as far as the book goes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just who's Marius? What's a barricade? I only know about the sewers.
I know the musical inside and out.
Yeah.
But the book itself, the only thing I ever heard about it was just the huge sewer system chapter.
Well, this section will be interesting then for you because part 3 of the book is titled Marius.
Yep.
And it is the one that has the least in the musical.
Right.
So we'll just get into it because this book is long and I love talking about it. So where we left last off was Jean Valjean had collected Cosette from the Thénardiers.
Yep. He
took her into Paris and then was discovered by Javert. They snuck through the night and ended up sneaking into a monastery where Cosette went into training to be a nun. She got her education, and Jean Valjean was left to be a gardener, and Javert was none the wiser because men aren't allowed in convents. So that's where the last one ended. This one picks up with Marius's father, who is the Colonel Pontmercy. I don't remember how the start of this one goes very well, so this is going to be very kind of all over the place. So the Colonel was he did something brave during Napoleon's war, but Napoleon, after he lost power, his officers and his barons, they also lost power and they were kind of looked down upon by the rest of the people.
Right.
So even though Marius' father should have been a big deal, he ended up living alone in a tiny little house. He sent his son to live with the son's, the mother's father.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mother's dead. Well, I know she is. I don't know when, though. But anyway, the grandfather, what's his name? It's Gillenormand or something.
Mm-hmm.
He raises Marius, and he's rich. And his one condition is that, and he's a royalist, he likes the royal families, so his one condition is that the father, who is a Napoleon supporter, is not allowed to see the son. So he forbids any contact. Napoleon's father, Marius' father, he lives in a little house. He does gardening, and he's kind of like Fantine with Cosette, where it's like he can't see his kid, but he's like privately obsessed with his kid. The book starts by just doing like a little detailed history of him, and then a little detailed history of the grandfather and Marius and the grandfather's relationship. Marius is like spoiled by the grandfather, and then as Marius is like an older teen, he's about to go into schooling to be a lawyer, or maybe he's already in school to be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But then he receives word from his father that his father's dying, and Marius doesn't want to go because Marius believes all the things that the grandfather said. But the grandfather tells him just to go because he's on his deathbed. Marius, who's not like looking forward to going, kind of takes his time. He kind of misses a train or something. He's not in a hurry to get out there. And when he gets out there, the father has just died. So he missed them by like a little bit.
Right.
Which is kind of similar to what happens with Fantine and Cosette, because Cosette's begging for Fantine to come. Fantine's begging for Cosette to come. And Jean Valjean's like, yeah, I'll bring her soon. And then Fantine dies before Jean Valjean can go get Cosette.
Right.
So the father dies. He leaves Marius with two things. I think one of them's like a watch or something. Basically, he leaves a note for Marius saying that Marius is he wants his title of being a baron to be passed on to Marius, and that Thénardier, who saved the baron during the war, which was actually he robbed the baron and that woke him up after he got knocked unconscious. But yeah, so he wants wants Marius to do any favor he can for Thénardier if he ever meets him, and to have his title. Marius is like still kind of not really caring, but then he hears like he hears people talking about his father and like how good of a man he was, and it kind of puts Marius in like a weird spot because he doesn't know what to say because he never knew his father. Then one day Marius goes back into town and kind of just lives his life as normal. And then one day when he's at his church, because he's a religious kid, he sits in a different spot than usual, and somebody says, the guy's name is Monsieur Mabouf, and I don't know if he shows up later, but he doesn't do anything important later. He just shows up again.
Right.
He says, oh, you're sitting in the spot where that man used to sit every week. And then basically Marius' father had been coming to the same church as Marius every week just to like be able to see Marius without Marius knowing.
Right.
And then he talked to this Monsieur Mabouf guy or whatever, and Marius got to know a little bit more about his father, and he started to like kind of idealize his father, like, because it's like he's this mysterious figure who was like he never really got to know, who was apparently a good guy, who apparently loved Marius.
Right.
And so then he started to really like his father and really start to distrust his grandfather.
Right.
So Marius starts going on all these like private little journeys around the countryside, like out to where his father lived, out to spots where he heard Thénardier might live. Just trying to find out more about his father, and also trying to find Thénardier to do the favor.
Wait, how old is he?
Marius is like late teens, early 20s. He's in law school.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it's the same age as like when we would go to college.
Okay.
So that's what he's doing. And what happens? He meets, so he tells his grandfather off basically one day. Or the grandfather finds the pin or the note or whatever.
Right.
And then, oh no, sorry. What happens is when Marius becomes like enthralled with his father, he eventually decides to go and make himself business cards that calls himself the Baron Marius Pontmercy. Like he takes his father's title.
Right.
And the grandfather finds those, and then he pieces everything together. And the whole time the grandfather and there's like an aunt and like some other old people like living in this house.
Right.
And they all kind of like talk like, oh, Marius must have a little lover or like a little mistress. And then they find out that he's like actually following in his father, like the Napoleonist footsteps.
Right.
And they're like furious, and then the grandfather's super proud and won't like whatever, and Marius is also proud, so they kind of like butt heads, and then finally the grandfather tells Marius to leave, and he's like, good, I was going to anyway. So Marius leaves, has nowhere to go.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Yep. He spends his first day just riding around the city in a cab.
Right.
He just hires a cab and then doesn't get out.
Drives around.
And somebody else gets in the cab, and it's a guy named Corfriak. I believe it's Corfriak.
Okay.
He is like, oh, you have nowhere to go? Well, you should come stay with me and my friends. So Corfriak invites Marius to come stay in his house with him, and it's like in the upstairs of a tavern. And also in the upstairs of this tavern, Marius meets a few friends. There's Anjolras, Buisette. I'm going to mess up all their names. I know Anjolras for sure. But then there's like Bisuet. There's the Eagle or Legel, which might also be Bisuet, because I think Bisuet had like a weird nickname.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez. He meets the revolutionaries, basically. And there's like 6 of them. They each have a little introductory chapter. The introductory chapter for them comes way before they become plot important. So other than Enjolras, I forget all of them. Grantaire, who's in love with Enjolras, I remember him. And he's in the musical. He's the one who like reaches out for Enjolras before they get shot.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oh yeah, spoilers. If you don't know Les Mis.
If you don't know, a book called Les Miserables ends kind of rough. But anyway, so they...
I've got a pronunciation for character names here.
Oh, here we go.
Anjolras.
Yep.
There's a guy named Fouilly.
Okay,
Feuilly. Fouilly.
Okay.
Grantaire.
Mm-hmm.
Leguet.
Okay.
There is Gavroche.
Oh.
Bam à ta bois. Bam à to boy.
Oh,
That's
okay,
how it's
yeah,
spelled, but it's pronounced Bam à ta bois.
Bois, yeah.
And Fauchelevent.
Oh, I always call him Fauchelevent.
And Lamarck. And Brujon.
Oh, Brujon, he's one of the
Yeah.
Robbers, I think.
Babet.
Yep, also one of the robbers.
Kiaxu.
Okay.
Montparnasse.
One of the robbers, yeah.
Courfeyrac.
Yeah, okay, that's the guy I was saying who Marius stays with.
Right. Combeferre.
Yeah, oh, he's one of the other ones, yeah.
Jolie.
He's one of... Oh, he shows up later, he's in the bar.
And Madeleine are the names that are listed on.
What's the last one?
Madeline.
Oh, yeah, like Monsieur Madeleine.
Yeah.
That's one of Jean Valjean's aliases.
Yeah, that's those are the names that are listed on this list.
Oh, interesting.
There you go.
All right, well, some of those are revolutionaries.
I just went through the whole list. They're very French.
So, while Marius is staying with the revolutionaries, he's kind of like a college boy discovering like other like intellectuals.
Oh.
Where it's like they're having these late night conversations, they're getting really drunk, arguing about pointless stuff.
Right.
And then so they're talking about how they don't like the king, and Marius is like, yeah, I don't like the king either. I'm a Napoleon supporter. And then one night it kind of comes out that Marius is a Napoleon supporter, and they're like, no, it's not that we don't like the king, we don't like any king.
Right.
Like, the people should be free to rule themselves.
Right.
And Marius goes on this big long thing defending Napoleon, and then the guys kind of all diss him and then leave, and Enjolras is the only one left, and he's like, look, you're not on the right track there, Marius. And so Marius is left feeling like dejected and like abandoned by his new friends.
Right.
But also he's kind of like going through like another like internal like revolution where it's like at first he was like, oh, my father's not as bad as he said he was. Oh, Napoleon isn't as bad as my grandfather said he was. Like, that was a huge change for him. And then now he's like, wait, what if Napoleon was also bad? And so he's going through like another little change.
Right.
But in that time, he ends up getting he leaves Courfeyrac. Courfeyrac gets him a job doing translation. So Marius is taking books from, like, I think it's like English and German, translating them to French.
Right.
And young Marius is also young Victor Hugo.
Okay.
I found that out while reading through some of the endnotes and stuff.
Okay.
So this is what happened in Victor Hugo's life. Is he was doing this kind of translating, living in he finds a really cheap apartment, which also happens to be the cheap apartment building that Jean Valjean first moves in when he comes with Cosette.
Yeah.
The one that Javert is hiding in.
Yeah.
So, that's just a little neat coincidence.
So what you're saying is Les Mis is a true story.
It's... I don't think so. I don't know how much Victor himself would have participated in the revolution, but...
Did he build a barricade and then all of his friends died?
And all of his friends died. And then a mysterious old convict carried him away.
He sings a very sad song in the remains of the barricade.
Oh, that's good. So anyway, he's living in this apartment. He's basically, it's kind of like the Fantine section where she's like really poor but makes it work.
Yep.
Marius is the same, but the difference is he doesn't have to spend all his money on a kid.
Right.
So he's like slowly kind of building his way out of poverty. His grandfather also keeps trying to send him money every 6 months or something, and Marius just returns it without saying anything.
Right.
Oh no, it's not the grandfather, it's the aunt. So the grandfather never finds out that Marius has been rejecting this money.
Right.
Anyway, Marius, so he's living in there all alone, and then he starts going for these walks because he doesn't have friends to go out with. He doesn't have like stuff to do in the evenings. He's not going out to drinking or anything. So he just goes for walks in this garden. Mm-hmm. And while in this garden, he meets an older man, and with him is a pretty young girl.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm not going to do the Victor Hugo thing and pretend that we don't know who they are.
Who could they be?
It's Cosette and Valjean. You know, okay, I'll get into that later. But, yeah, so he doesn't know who they are. He calls them, because Valjean's hair is all white, he calls him Monsieur Leblanc. Okay. Mr. the White.
Mr. White.
And Cosette, he doesn't know what Cosette's name is at all. And for the first 6 months he's there, he barely notices them. And then I think at this point Cosette's like 15 or 16.
So he does a double take?
Yeah. And then after like 6 months, suddenly one day he's like, wait, that girl's super pretty. So then he smiles at her the first day. And then he thinks she smiles back and he's all pumped. But then he just goes back and sits at his bench on the other side of the park. The second day, he decides to walk a little bit closer to their bench to see if she notices, and guess what? She does.
Oh boy.
And so this carries on for a long time, and it's very innocent and very like, ooh, I think she might have waved at me. At one point, Cosette's walking past Marius, and then the wind blows her dress up a little bit, and he sees like the back of her thigh, and he's like offended.
That's more than a little bit. That is an intense breeze.
Yeah. It might have just been like the back of her calf or the back of her knee or something. It's not scandalous. Like he doesn't like
yeah, the back of her thigh, that would have been a real short skirt. Or a real big wind. Too. Yeah.
Tornado picked up. Woof. It must have just been like the back of her calf or something.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, he sees a little bit of skin and he's scandalized.
Right.
And it's like it's trying to capture that like weird first love thing where you're getting jealous over nothing.
Jealous
he's
over
like,
the wind.
Yeah, he's jealous because like, what if another man had been walking and seen this?
Oh no.
And so he pouts for 2 days, and Cosette's like, you don't see her perspective, but she just like gives him a look like, what's wrong with you?
Come on, buddy.
So it's actually really fun. I like their courtship a lot. So this is going on, and then one day, I can't remember what else is happening with Marius at this time. I don't think anything important. One day, the girl doesn't come, and it's just the father sitting there. And Marius basically walks in, sees that no girl's not there, turns on his heels and walks out.
That gif of Grandpa Simpson walking into the strip club where he walks in whistling, takes off his hat, puts his hat back on, and then walks out the door.
It's that. Then the next one is... he gets there and then they leave. And then they leave behind a handkerchief. And the handkerchief has the letters UF written on them. And he decides, oh, her name must be Ursula. Because that's the only name he can think of that starts with a U. So he takes the handkerchief and he sniffs it and he's like, oh, my beloved. And of course the handkerchief belonged to Jean Valjean. And the UF is for Ultimus or whatever his fake name was.
Yeah.
Ultimus Fauchelevent. So that's his. So Marius does that, and then there's one other little thing that happens.
Oh, Marius, come on, buddy.
Basically, it's described as Jean Valjean setting traps and Marius falling for all of them.
I can see why they didn't include this in the musical.
It would have been a drawn out process. Yeah. It would have been a long song.
Yeah, it would have been a very long sequence of events.
But it's then anyway, what happens is Valjean and Cosette just leave. I do like this way better than the musical, because in the musical it's like they see one time, they're instantly in love.
Yeah.
Marius is willing to die for her.
Yeah, I never understood that, and then you explained to me that like there's a whole courtship thing happening in the books.
In this, there's like the garden thing lasts for like a year of Marius's life.
Right.
And then they meet up again, and there's more courtship later, also in a garden.
Right.
So then Marius is heartbroken because they're not showing up. He's going there every day. He's hanging out there all day long. Like he's because his work is just translating books, he can do that on the side.
Right.
But he's like skipping his classes to just do this. I think he gets his law license or whatever. So I don't know if they had degrees. But he gets his like license, but he doesn't become a lawyer. He says he's happy just doing the translating, and he's making enough money to survive, so that's all he wants.
Right.
But in the meantime, after Cosette leaves, he kind of becomes friends with Courfeyrac and them again. It's not as like intense as it was, and he still feels division between them because of the whole Napoleon debacle.
Right.
But he also meets his neighbors. Marius is living in this cheap little apartment building. It's kind of a slum. And then there's a weird, like, kind of girl about Cosette's age who comes over and just, like, kind of strolls into his apartment, and he's, like, scandalized by how, like, comfortable she is in a man's bedroom. And it's Eponine.
Yeah.
It's the Thénardiers living next door, but they're going by a fake name because Thénardier owes everybody in Paris money.
Of course.
I can't remember what their fake name is, but it's funny. How does it go? First he sees them and they drop some letters or something, and he reads them, and it's all like, "Oh, monsieur, my name is Jean-Francois." That's a made-up name. I can't remember what the name is in the book. I'm a famous I'm an artist, but I'm currently struggling, and I need your patronage to help complete my thing. And then the next one's like, "Oh, dear sir, I'm an injured war veteran, and I need your assistance because blah, 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 blah." And the last one's like, "Oh, my precious wife is dearly sick, and she needs your help to..." It's like Thénardier is making these fake letters to beg for money from people. And he's like, just basically like Nigerian prince scamming them.
Right.
And so Marius finds these letters, doesn't know what they're for, but decides to give them back to the girls. The girls are like super thankful because Thénardier is vicious and violent, and so is his wife. And they're like, "Oh, we would have gotten beaten for sure if we didn't get these out." They're living in absolute squalor. Like, Marius is like, he just has like a tiny kind of slummy apartment, but they're like, they've got nothing at all. They don't even have fire. They don't have food. The only thing it says is that Thénardier always found money for tobacco, so the place constantly reeked of cigarette smoke. But that was it. And Eponine kind of flirts with Marius for a little bit. Marius doesn't get it at all. She is trying to brag about how smart she is because she knows he's like a writer. So she writes down on a note, she's like, "Look, my father told me how to write." And she writes, "The police are here, run." Because that's all Thénardier would have taught her how to write. So they have kind of a fun little thing. And then one day, one of the letters gets sent out, and Marius sees Eponine leading an old man into the apartments. And this old man happened to have all white hair, and Marius recognizes him right away. It's Monsieur Leblanc, or also known to the reader as Jean Valjean. Marius also, at some point, I can't remember exactly how, but he discovers there's a hole between his apartment and the apartment next door that he can look inside. So he watches this exchange go down. And at first he's like, "Oh, look, they're begging this man for money. It's blah, 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 blah." Jean Valjean brings in like a bunch of blankets and stuff, and they don't want it. They just want cash. But then he notices that Ursula is with them, or Cosette, and he stops paying attention to what's happening in the scene because he only sees her.
Right.
So then he's pretty desperate, and he wants to see her again. But then right after Jean Valjean leaves, then Thénardier is like, "Do you recognize who that is?" And then his wife's like, "No." And it's like, "That's that old rich guy who stole Cosette from us." And they're like, "No, surely it's not." And it's like, "No, it's definitely him. We need to get him back here and get our like robber friends together and just like rob the crap out of this guy. So that's their plan. Then they introduce a bunch of robber characters. There's the ones that you mentioned. There's like Babette. I'm not going to go through all their names. All that's important about them is that they're like dangerous criminals, and they're like have this like bad reputation. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
They make a scheme to lure Jean Valjean back there under the pretense of like getting a piece of art from this because he was pretending to be like the struggling artist.
Right.
So then Jean Valjean was supposed to come and buy a piece of art from him.
Right.
And Marius, hearing this plan, goes to the police to tell them what's going on. He of course runs into an inspector named Javert because it's Les Mis, everything's connected. Javert gives him 2 pistols and says, we're going to have police waiting around the corner from the house. We need you to listen through the wall to their conversation. And the second that this guy is actually in danger and we can convict them of a crime, you need to fire one of the pistols out the window, and we'll take that as a sign to come running. So that's what happens. Marius is waiting. They basically spring the trap on Valjean right away. But then it's revealed that Thénardier's name is Thénardier. And then Marius is like, oh, this is the man I'm supposed to serve. Like, this is the man my father said that I had to do a favor for because he saved my father's life.
Yeah.
So Marius is like suddenly very conflicted because he doesn't want the father of Ursula to get killed, but also he doesn't want to screw over Thénardier, who's the guy who saved his father.
Right.
So he's really conflicted. It's a really long scene, and then Jean Valjean does this weird thing where he beats up all the criminals, and then he grabs a hot iron and stabs it on his own arm, and is like, look how strong I am. Well, if you guys want to rob me, I guess do it. And he just like kind of reserves himself in the corner. It's very weird. Anyway, Marius comes up with a plan. He decides he's going to shove through the hole. He's going to shove that note that Eponine wrote that said the police are here, run.
Yeah.
And so he shoves it through the hole so it goes into the floor. They see the note and say, oh, it's your daughter. She warned us. We have to run. But then right as that's happening, then Javert and his men break in anyway. And they're like, oh, you didn't send the signal, you stupid boy. You coward, you fool. And they run into the apartment. Jean Valjean, recognizing Javert, immediately dives out the window. So they arrest all the criminals. They're like, hey, wait, where did the victim go? So that is how the book 3 ends. That's how the book about Marius ends.
All right.
The next book is the epic. Oh, and we're already at like our normal time. So I'm going to try to do this one faster.
Okay.
It's going to be hard though, because this one has more stuff happen in it.
Okay.
So this one is the Epic of Saint Denis, or Saint Denis, as it's spelled in normal person language. Yeah, the Epic on the Rue Saint Denis. So what happens is Marius, Thénardier is dragged off to jail. What's his name? Or Eponine is also gets in trouble, I think, because she was doing lookout. Basically, the whole Thénardier family is dragged off to jail. Mm-hmm. The book starts with Gavroche. So Gavroche is the not the youngest son of the Thénardiers, but he's younger than Eponine and Azelma. Gavroche is a total street urchin. It goes into the urchin lifestyle and what he does on the streets and how he gets by. I believe it starts with so it kind of like introduces Gavroche. Gavroche might actually get introduced during the Marius section, but he doesn't become important until this section.
Right.
Then there's 2 other kids who also happen to belong to the Thénardiers at one point, who they sold them to another criminal who was pretending to have kids to scam the government out of money.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing like a child welfare scam or something.
Right.
And so, but they didn't have any kids, so they just rented the Thénardiers' 2 youngest sons.
Right.
And then after they got arrested, because they were part of this whole scheme at the Thénardiers, they got arrested, so then the 2 boys were just left on their own. They're wandering the streets, they don't know what to do, they're hungry. And then Gavroche like takes them under his wing and is like, you foolish boys, this is what you do. And he's like stealing food from people and being like a little urchin. And then they go and hide out in a giant statue. They hatch a plan. Gavroche is involved, or the criminals come for Gavroche and tell him, hey, we hatched a plan to get your dad out of jail. Or no, he doesn't even know it's his dad. It's like to get some people out of jail. And then because when Gavroche is there, he's like, oh, I think I know that man. I'm pretty sure he's my father. But so they do this whole scheme to get the prisoners out of jail, including Thénardier. At this time, Eponine also runs into Marius again, and Marius makes her promise that she'll tell him where the man with the white hair and his daughter live. And Eponine's like, why? Because you want to talk to the daughter? And Marius is like, yeah, of course. That's what I want. Tell me now. And because Eponine's in love with him, she agrees, like, begrudgingly. And tells him where they live. And then also, he makes her promise that she won't tell her father where they live. And I think she's already told her dad, but now she has to, like, cover for it. And try to, like, make up an excuse why her dad can't go there and rob him.
Right.
So this is the whole section in the musical where Marius is, like, singing outside Cosette's garden.
Yeah, the 3-part harmony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This goes on for a while in the book where he finds her garden. Jean Valjean is either in bed or else he goes out for walks late at night. But basically, in the evening time, Cosette's totally free and can see Marius, and it's kind of revealed that she, of course, liked Marius too, and
right.
They've been admiring each other from afar, and she was wishing that he'd come over and talk to her, and he was wishing blah blah blah,
Yeah.
So they have this little bonding thing. Actually no, at first he's just watching her in the garden, and then he leaves a letter for her on the bench, and it's the funniest, like, notation, because it's like these, like, 2 pages of solid, like, 1 paragraph letters where it's like, when I see her, my heart moves faster.
Is this the one you texted me about? Yeah.
So he's like, this, like, really flowery love language, and then it ends with this just note from the editor that's like,
becoming increasingly religious and mystical, but also alluding increasingly to his brief encounters with Cosette. Marius's effusions continue for another 4 pages.
Yeah, that another 4 pages is like, it's so good. They're throwing shade on Hugo. So that's after that. That's when they start doing their bonding thing. Thénardier comes to rob them. Eponine convinces them to leave by saying she'll scream if they come close. They end up leaving. Somehow in the hustle, Valjean, like, either hears them or sees them walking away down the street and figures out, like, that Thénardier knows where he lives now. And he's like, okay, I need to get Cosette out of here. And he's trying to make his decision of where they're going to move. And then a mysterious figure, who we later find out is just Eponine, comes up behind him and, like, throws a note at him, throws a piece of paper at him that says, get out. And he's like, he doesn't know who this paper's from, but he's like, somebody's watching me. Somebody obviously knows who I am. So we need to leave now. This leads to Cosette and Marius having this weird, like, okay, we need to either get married right now or something. Like, they're like, we need to figure out something to do right now. Because Valjean tells Cosette he's moving her to England. So that's like, oh, we have to do something now. Marius, he goes to his grandfather, who he has not talked to since he was kicked out.
Right.
So it's been, like, years. And at first the grandfather is, like, super happy to see him, but he's being proud and, like, refuses to admit it. And then Marius is like, okay, well, if you don't want to see me, I'll just leave. And then the grandfather's like, no, stay. And so they, like, kind of patch things up a bit, but then Marius is like, look, I just wanted to ask your permission to marry this girl. And then he's like, tell me all about her. Marius tells him the whole story. And then the grandfather's like, oh, foolish boy, just take her for your mistress. Problem solved. And then Marius is, like, so offended by this because he's like, loves Cosette with, like, this purest love imaginable.
Yeah.
So he's like, how dare you insinuate that about my future wife? And the grandfather's like, wait, what? And then Marius storms out. The grandfather's, like, yelling out the window to come back because he doesn't know what happened. It's a really good scene. Then Marius goes back to find Cosette, but because Jean Valjean got that mysterious note, he's like, we're leaving now. So he packs up Cosette's stuff he makes Cosette pack up her own stuff, and then he takes her to this, like, other little cottage that he had rented a while ago as, like, a safe house that's, like, close-ish to the port so that they can get on a boat and head to England.
Yep.
I think that's what it was.
Mhm.
But anyway, so they head to this other place, and Cosette, as she's leaving, she sees somebody who's dressed up like a boy. It's Eponine. And she's like, "Oh, messenger boy, can you please take this message to basically the apartment that Marius was staying at?
Yeah.
And please, it's very important. You need to take him this message." And it was just saying where Cosette was staying until they were leaving to England.
Mhm.
But gave it to Eponine. Eponine's not going to give it to Marius. But now Eponine has Marius's new address because he left the slum.
Yeah.
After the criminal stuff. So then she goes to the other apartment where she meets up with Courfeyrac and the boys.
The boys.
It's time for the revolution, so they're going out to build the barricade.
Right.
This abridged section that I have cuts out a whole section just focusing on that. So like this is the one thing I wish it didn't cut out. Like it's like a whole section focusing on the revolutionaries and the barricade and like what happened to lead up to it.
Mm-hmm.
You get none of that. You don't get the, like in the musical they have the Red and Black song.
Yeah.
They have the movie musical anyway has the like funeral for that like sympathizer and
General Lamarck.
Yes, General Lamarck that turns into like the riot.
Yeah.
That's briefly alluded to, but it's not in this version of the book.
Huh.
So that's a little disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy I don't have to read the sewer section, but that is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, no kidding.
So they're heading out to build their barricade. It goes through the whole section of them building the barricade and what that's like. Gavroche shows up pretty early to the barricade. I can't remember why, but he's like, this is fun for him. He's liking it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps begging for a gun, and they're like, no, you're a child. Eponine runs to find, or she goes with Courfeyrac to the barricade, and then she decides to go find Marius, and Marius is at Cosette's place trying to get in, and nobody's there, and he's like freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. Eponine shows up and is like, but she's dressed as a boy, and he doesn't recognize her right away.
Of course not.
Also, he's such a jerk to Eponine the whole time. He never recognizes Eponine until she says, like, Marius, it's me, it's Eponine. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry, you're just not Cosette, so I didn't notice you.
Poor Eponine.
Yeah, she gets treated fairly poorly throughout this book.
She's really miserable.
She is. Actually, she is. She is the first person that term is applied to in this book.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Because it's talking about how she's like so like she's super skinny but like starved skinny.
Right. And
how she like is forced into a life of crime by her parents, how she's constantly beaten and constantly freezing. She doesn't have proper clothing, and she is like her parents have basically sold her into prostitution a few times to get money from her. Like it's basically her life has not been good.
Yeah.
Up until that point. So she goes back to tell Marius, your friends are waiting for you at I think it's at the Rue Saint Denis, because that's what the section of the book's called. But I don't actually remember them saying that when they're at the barricade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, regardless, she goes there. The barricade section is going to all run together in my head because there's so much that happens. So first they're building the barricade. They have a bunch of people in a tavern, and some of them are like just like residents of that street who like basically have no choice but like because their place is about to get like bombarded anyway.
We've decided to build our barricade in front of your house.
Yeah. So you can either help us or I guess stay home and might get shot. I don't know. They're like running into houses and pillaging like their tables and stuff to add to the barricade.
Mm-hmm.
Do
you imagine if somebody just like built a barricade on the street in front of our house?
Imagine what the old guy next door would do.
Oh, he'd be so upset.
Be coming over to yell at us about our lawn being half an inch too long, and then be like, wait, there's a barricade here.
There's a barricade. Those children don't know what they're doing.
Actually, we should build a barricade in front of his house. Sorry if our neighbor listens to this. I think you're a very kind man. Oh. I've enjoyed our interaction. So anyway, they're building the barricade. At one point, I'm just going to say things randomly as they come into my head because I don't remember the exact order. I know how this section of the book ends, but the stuff that happens before that is kind of all mixed together. They're in this downstairs part of the tavern. They're talking to each other. Gavroche walks in. Gavroche has been bossing people around all day, because he's too small to do any work himself.
Right.
Then as Gavroche walks in, he's like, "Oh, you guys know that guy in the corner is a spy, right?" And they're like, "Wait, what?" And it's Javert sitting there in the corner.
Yeah.
So they tie Javert up to the table. They steal the big musket that he had. Gavroche is like, "I get his gun because I'm the one who spotted him." And they're like, "Fine, you can have his gun." Gavroche gets... Then... Ooh, what's next? Okay, the next part is they're on the barricade, I believe. The soldiers have shown up, and they're just coming straight over the barricade, like, they're not hesitating.
Yeah.
And they're able to break through, like, right away. And...
Not a very good barricade then.
Yeah, their first attempt at the barricade sucks. And, what's his name? I think it's not Grantaire. Grantaire gets super drunk, kind of confesses his feelings for Enjolras, and is mean to a random waitress for no reason.
Right.
And then Enjolras tells him that he's a loser and he shouldn't be a part of the revolution because he doesn't even believe in the cause. And that like causes Grantaire to sink into a depression, and he passes out for the majority of the action.
All right.
So Courfeyrac maybe, or Combier or whatever. One of the revolutionary boys. Yeah, that's what I call
with
them.
an I?
Yeah. Boiz.
Boys. Revolutionary boys.
One of them almost gets killed by a guy. There's a guy with a bayonet like right over top of him. Gavroche gets attacked by a guy, and Gavroche goes to shoot them with Javert's rifle, not realizing that Javert's rifle has not been loaded.
Oh no.
So then Gavroche is in trouble. But at that exact moment, Marius rolls up with Eponine.
Wait, Eponine's at the barricade?
In her man clothes.
Oh, I got Eponine and Cassette confused for a second.
No. Yeah, it's Eponine.
In my head, they just got crisscrossed, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes
sense.
So
a man tries to shoot Marius. The mysterious working boy, who we don't know who it is, it's Eponine, grabs the gun and takes the bullet herself. Marius takes the 2 pistols that Javert had given them like months ago, blasts the guy who's going to shoot Combeferre or whatever, and then blasts the guy who's about to shoot Gavroche. Then like there's chaos all around. Marius runs inside and grabs the black powder keg, the gunpowder, brings it outside and is like, then grabs like a match or like he grabs some fire somehow. And
in the
it's
movie
like,
it was like a torch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he grabs some fire and he's like, if anyone comes closer, I'm blowing up the barricade.
Right.
And like, if you guys don't back down right now, I'm blowing up the barricade with everybody on it. And the guys are like, huh, even yourself? And then Mary's like, yeah, even myself. And they're like, oh, okay. I should also mention, I don't think I have yet, Marius is hardcore suicidal after he couldn't find Cosette.
Right.
Because he thinks she already left for England.
Right.
He's his obsessed loving self. He's like, if I can't live with her, I can't live.
Right.
So he's ready to die. His whole reason for coming to the barricade is not because he like is a big revolutionary with his friends.
He wants
it's more
to die
like
because his girlfriend's gone.
Yeah, he's ready to die, and he's like, this is as good a way as any. My friends need me, and I might as well. So that happens. The people back down. At this point, they've now like Marius has become basically the leader. Like it's him and Enjolras.
Yeah.
Because Enjolras is the guy with like the vision, but Marius is like the hero of the barricade.
Right.
So together, him and Enjolras like help them to build the barricade up much higher and much more treacherous, so that the guards can't just walk over it again.
Yeah.
So they focus on that for a long time.
Eponine dies.
Eponine dies, but Marius doesn't notice for a long time.
What? They don't sing A Little Fall of Rain together?
They kind of do, but she's laying on the ground, like, dying for a while before Marius is like, oh, there's a body over here. And then it's like, the body reaches out and grabs his leg, and he's like, whoa.
Oh, no.
And then that's when he realizes that the working boy was actually Eponine. Eponine is like, oh, sit with me for a while. One of the funniest lines she says is, you know what, Marius? I do think I was a little bit in love with you.
Just an FYI.
Yeah, just kind of thinks about that before she dies. She dies. I believe Gavroche dies too. He does, but I think that happens before the end of this section.
Well, he goes out to collect the ammo.
Oh,
at least
yes,
in the
but
movie.
that's later. That is later.
Yeah.
Gavroche doesn't die. Gavroche has something important to do. Marius, knowing that Gavroche is one of Thénardier's kids, and thinking that this is how he can finally pay off his favor to Thénardier, decides he's going to send Gavroche away from the barricade so that Gavroche won't die.
Okay.
Because he know Marius, like, they all know they're basically all going to die.
Yeah.
But Marius is like, okay, I need to save this kid.
Right.
And it's... Maybe he doesn't know it's Thénardier's kid. Maybe he just knows it's a kid that he doesn't want him to die.
A child.
So, what he does is, when Eponine's dying, she gives Marius the note that she withheld from him.
Right.
So then he finds out that Cosette's still in the city and she's out of place. Marius wants to send a note saying to Cosette, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. My grandfather didn't give us permission to marry. I will be dying at this location. I'm at the barricade. He's like, I will at least keep my promise that if I can't live with you, I can't live.
Oof.
And sends the note with Gavroche. Gavroche leaves. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay at the barricade. But he decides that if he heads like right now, he can get to them before midnight or something. Like he can get to the house before midnight.
Yeah. And
then he can just drop off the note and leave. Jean Valjean, who likes to take his late night walks, is out walking and sees Gavroche coming up to his door. And he's like, what do you want with me, street urchin? Or no, he's nice. Jean Valjean's nice to the kid. I should also note, they have still not used his name. He's still either Monsieur Leblanc or a mysterious old man.
Really?
Yeah.
Like this long?
But I will say something about it when it ends, because it's very good.
Okay.
So he's like, I can take the note in for them. Like, I know the people who live here. I'm the porter or whatever. So Gavroche is like, good, I just want to get rid of this note anyway. Gives the old man the note and then, like, starts running off. And then Jean Valjean's like, ooh, look, my problem's solved for me. The guy who was trying to steal Cosette away from me is about to get himself killed. And then he's like, he goes through a similar moment of when that guy was about to be thrown in jail for him.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't let this kid die. So he's like, I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go to the barricade. So then it ends with him leaving. And then in giant block font, it says, Part 5, Jean Valjean. One thing I'll say, like, I always make fun of Victor Hugo for the way he doesn't say Jean Valjean's name ever.
Mm-hmm.
But when he actually uses the name, it's always in, like, a very powerful context. Like, it's never like, Jean Valjean went to the store. It's like, oh, a mysterious hero rose above the barricade. It was Jean Valjean. Like, his restriction of the use makes it more powerful.
Yeah.
Kind of like...
I heard that, like, the reason Jean Valjean's name is Jean Valjean is that's because it's just, like, super bland. Anybody can kind of fit into that role. Yeah. Because it's just like John is his name or something, right? Yeah. And maybe that kind of plays a part of, like, why he doesn't use the name very often to begin with.
Yeah, it could be. I also think, like, Victor Hugo, like, the way this book is told, it's supposed to be, like, somebody investigating this thing that happened 30 years ago. Okay. Like, because he's investigating the revolution and the people who, like, made the barricade and stuff like that. Right. So he's, like, he always pretends that he doesn't have all the information, or, like, oh, we were told this by a mysterious source, or, like, stuff like that. Okay. So for him to just go along with the, oh, Monsieur Leblanc, because that's what Marius knew him as. Right. Like, it kind of makes sense in the context. But we're super way over. We're going to go over our general thoughts on the next one, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so that was Les Mis Part 2.
Les Mis Part 2.
Stay tuned for next week for Les Mis Part 3.
Yes.
The last section of the book is where I definitely cry every time. I haven't cried while reading the book yet, I don't think. Or no, maybe when Cosette's alone in the woods, that part's sad.
Right. And then Jean Valjean shows up and is like, show me where you live.
Show me where you live.
Don't be afraid of me. Show me where you live.
Oh, that movie. Oh. Anyway, yeah, so thanks for listening. Danny, where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean, Literary AF. Find us on Twitter, LiteraryAFPod, and you can send us a Gmail, literaryafpod@gmail.com.
And don't forget to buy our merch at Forever 21. It's just in the store. Whatever shirt you can find is technically Literary AF.
I don't think that's how merch works.
Yeah, we
can't
don't really
just say that that's ours now.
We don't really get any cut of the profits. You can support us on... there's no way for you to currently support us.
I mean, you can support us by liking and sharing podcasts.
That's true.
Reviews and positive notes and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can always email us.
You can email us.
Especially if you have recommendations for books.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've got stuff planned for like the next few weeks, but then after that, like, we're kind of open to suggestions.
Yeah, so if there's any like ideas, books you want us to talk about, read, get opinions on, we're open to that kind of thing for sure.
Yeah, for diggity.
Yeah. Send us the weirdest book you can find.
Yeah, Danny would love to read them.
That's how it'll end up being, yeah. No doubt.
Alright, well, thank you for listening, and tune in next week for Les Mis Part 3.
Mm-hmm. Bye!